Ice has dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Monday. It's an overreaction Monday. It is a very sleepy Monday after the U.S. and Mexico went about 173 minutes of game action, of extra time, of stoppage time, of mandated stoppages for other reasons. We'll get into all of that as we go this morning. Bart Keeler will join us at 10 o'clock to talk U.S. men's national team and his reaction. I'm sure he will have plenty of things on soccerdownhere.net and on our podcast network as well. Very, very busy morning with things to talk about. There's also a lot going on in Europe as the European Championships get ready to get started here. Next weekend, there are some squad changes for England. There are players testing positive for COVID for Spain. Friendlies getting canceled. There's South American World Cup qualifiers tomorrow. There's allegedly a Copa America getting ready to be played, but that is still in the allegedly status. Concacaf World Cup qualifiers tomorrow are going to be craziness because there's 5 games that will decide who goes into the playoff round to then go into the Ocho. So all kinds of stuff. We're going to start with trying to capture the madness from last night as best as we can because there's about 312 talking points coming out of that game. It was as ridiculous as you can get, but the important thing about it here is, one, the Nations League is on the map now for CONCACAF. They got a final that will be talked about for decades to come. The U.S. men's national team lifts a trophy, beating Mexico 3-2 in extra time. They are now 2-6 all-time in CONCACAF finals against Mexico. It's the first CONCACAF final Mexico has lost since Hugo Sanchez lost to the U.S. in the 2007 Gold Cup final. Ethan Horvath will have a lot of people giving him calls. He is out of contract, and he will be in demand after his performance coming off the bench. Jarrett Smith, you're hanging out with us this morning. What did you make of that ridiculousness last night?
It was CONCACAF, and at the same time, calling it strictly CONCACAF, I felt like did a disservice to the madness, but also the moments and the players. Dude, I can't remember. I'm running on way too little sleep right now, so I can't remember the name of the player from Mexico who scored the second goal. Plays for
Linus.
Yeah, plays over in Spain or Portugal. I remember. I think it was plays for Real Betis. Dude was just tap dancing on Tim Ream in a really disrespectful way. He scores 2 minutes after he comes on. Horvath is forced into the game because of an injury, and then saves Andres Guardado's penalty. Yeah, like with 2-3 minutes remaining in stoppage time of extra time because of one of the most theatrical referees I have ever seen in a final. That man, every time he went to VAR, it was the greatest showman every time he wanted to point to the spot, and it was amazing. All I kept seeing the entire game was people waiting for Christian Pulisic to step up and take his moment. Christian Pulisic hit one of the most unstoppable penalties you're going to see. Memo Ochoa would have had to be in his mind and get about a second head start to get to where Pulisic hit that ball. One of the simpler things of that game was Tata Martino putting an arm over the shoulder of the ref and getting sent off. Greg Berhalter just standing there with him, but they don't know what to do. It was an absolutely insane game. Things were thrown. Guys I thought were going to fight. The USA got punched in the mouth 2 minutes in and didn't collapse. They fought their way back in. They took their chances really well. They answered Mexico every time the bell was rung. The individual performances here were outstanding. The team was outstanding in terms of just that raw fight. And I know they talked about it after the Honduras game with, we need a game like this. Well, now you got a game like this, and I don't know what this, quote unquote, means for this in the context of whatever the hell happened late last night in Denver, Colorado. But that's the kind of thing that leaves scar tissue but not necessarily in a bad way. So shout out to everybody who just stepped the hell up on that field and took those moments that you need in a weird final like that.
Yeah, it's a final. It's US-Mexico. It's going to be weird. You have to kind of deal with the emotional moments that happen and handle them the right way. Nate McMillan uses a phrase talking about the Atlanta Hawks where he calls things that happen sometimes, that he says they're emotionally drunk. Well, this game was emotionally drunk from before the opening whistle because it's US-Mexico. It's going to be that way. Then it started mainlining tequila and vodka at the same time, and the U.S. handled it. They didn't dominate the game, and I think these things do have to be understood. It's 3 set pieces that the U.S. scores on. They didn't score from the run of play. It's 3 set pieces. The final one is a penalty that I thought was a penalty. A lot of people have went back and forth on it. I thought it was a penalty live. Seeing the replays, I thought it was a penalty even more because he steps in with his hip before he gets to the ball. If he had went to the ball to win the ball, I don't think it's a penalty. But he goes to draw the contact on Pulisic first with his hip stepping across him before getting to the ball, and I think it's a penalty. The penalty that gave Guardado his opportunity late, first off, it's Concacaf. You have to know that the referee is going to look for an opportunity to even it up on controversial penalties. That's just, if you've been around the block a few times in this confederation, you know that's going to happen. Don't like it? It's not the way it should be in a perfect world. It's the way it is, and you have to deal. It was a very difficult decision to give. I do understand why it was given. The arm was away from the body. It was a situation where I don't know really what else he can do with his arm, but it is out away from his body. I get the call. It took an eternity to make it, but I get the call. Massive credit to Ethan Horvath for keeping his head during all of that madness and just locking in and being focused. It's not a great penalty from Andres Guardado. He struck it well, but he didn't put it far enough into the corner. Horvath makes the big save with the right hand. Just the mentality of Ethan Horvath is the biggest thing to take away from that. But there are things that the U.S. did not do well. There were things that Greg Berhalter made adjustments to that were good adjustments. But I think the number one takeaway from me is the mentality of this group. And I'm not exactly sure where the memo went out in the U.S. Soccer hive mind on Twitter that Tyler Adams is obviously the next captain of the U.S. men's national team. I will fight tooth and nail that the captain of the U.S. men's national team is Weston McKennie. He is the heart and soul of this group.
Yep.
Weston McKennie is that dude. And Tyler Adams is a great player. But Weston McKennie is the one who will defend you in a fight, and he's the one who will pick you up and motivate you to get going again. He is that guy. And he's the one who deserves the armband. If you're going to go in that direction, look, Berhalter's rotating around. Different people are getting different opportunities, and maybe that's the way to go with a team this young and this close-knit. And say what you want about Greg Berhalter. The thing coming into this was, could have been Tata Martino for the U.S. Why is it Greg Berhalter? Yada, yada, yada. I was very down on Greg Berhalter at the beginning of his run because I think he looked at it too much as a club, not enough as a national team. He has made the necessary adjustments, and the mentality of the group doesn't happen if Greg Berhalter doesn't run the team and manage the team the way that he has. He has to get credit for that along with these players. This is a group that I feel better about going into away qualifiers in CONCACAF and getting necessary results. Doesn't mean they're going to beat everybody away from home because that's almost impossible to do in its confederation. Mexico hasn't done that consistently either, by the way. It is tough to go to Honduras. It is tough to go to Guatemala. It is tough to get those results. But I think this team showed that they can compete in those situations, keep their heads, and keep fighting. And that's the big takeaway I have from last night, John.
I was trying to figure out the right words. I know that you in the past have brought in huevos. Spilkis comes to mind. Nice Yiddish term, nerve. It was 1-0, was 2 until VAR pulled the second one off the board. Then it was 1-1. Every single time Mexico pushed, the United States pushed back. And one of the things in reading about the match last night, Sunday morning, Stefan, David Ochoa, and Ethan Horvath spent about a half an hour studying the penalty takers, along with goalkeeper coach Aaron Hyde, just in case, because you never know. And I give, as you did also, full credit to Ethan Horvath for keeping his head with all of this madness going around, where if you include all the stoppage time, I think it was 144 minutes total that this match was played. All of the madness going around. And if you can keep your head with all of this madness going around, and it's not just Ethan Horvath, but the United States team in general, if you can keep your head about you in situations like this, with all of the madness going around, you have pitch invaders, objects being thrown, keeping your head about you with all of this external stuff going on around you, I think it speaks well as to how this team, and I'm going to use that word, how this team has grown into a moment like this and has come out the other side. So I give, this is just one where you just sit there and you look at the madness and you come out of it, and you give full credit to the United States for coming out the other side here. And it's something that you can take with you when you're going on the road in those hostile environments, when you have all of those fans that are pouring down on top of you in an emotional sense. And if you can keep your head about you in this situation with everything that was going on around you, then it's full credit going forward. Definitely something that you can use going forward.
Yeah, the moment where I kind of felt like this is a different group than we've seen in a while. I mean, I'm going back to probably the 2014 World Cup, which I'm on record, and I'll always say it. I was really disappointed with the U.S.'s play in that tournament. It was very defensive, very negative. It was not the proactive soccer that we'd been promised by that manager, Jurgen Klinsmann, but the team had fight, and they fought, and they showed it in the Ghana match, and they showed it in the match against Belgium, where they probably should have lost 5-6-0, but they just found a way to hang around. They had fight. That fight dissipated over time, and it was one of the biggest problems with the U.S. in the qualification run for 2018, because they didn't have that. They didn't have that same grit, and it dramatically showed in the game in Trinidad, where it was just a street fight, and the U.S. wasn't up for the challenge. This team has talent, we know. I mean, you're talking about a different level of talent across the board for the U.S. than we're accustomed to seeing. And that's only going to be the new normal. This isn't going to always be, because generations come and go, but you're going to see more and more players playing at big clubs in Europe, players coming out of MLS and contributing straight away. You're going to see a guy like Kellen Acosta come in and give you a significant performance in a final playing for the Colorado Rapids. You're going to see those things happen because the level's gotten better. But what we saw last night was a little bit of a return to the old school U.S. men's national team with huevos, with that way of playing that, yeah, they want to play. They want to build out of the back. They want possession. They want to play the game in the way that Greg Berhalter sees it. We watched him in Columbus. He's a very well-respected manager. Again, say what you want about Greg Berhalter, but nobody called him a bum. You can say that he should have done X, Y, or Z. He shouldn't have handled Miles Robinson the way he did. 100%. He made mistakes. But he generally wants to play, and he's got players that can play. Well, last night he couldn't. Mexico had more of the possession. Mexico was thriving in the early sequences where the game was very frenetic and the U.S. was trying to play. All right. You got to make an adjustment sometimes, and you got to play long, and you got to do what you got to do. It's a final. It's not a league game. It's not, game 6 of a 34-game set. It's a final. You have to find a way. And they did. And where I really felt differently about this group was Weston McKennie's header a couple minutes after Lainez scored the goal in the 79th to give Mexico a 2-1 lead. Yes, it's a set piece. It's great delivery from Gio Reyna, who had a goal and an assist on the night. But McKennie gets up for it, heads it down with power. And then there's a point, I was watching it back this morning, that stuck with me, where after the wild celebrations, which you're going to have, it's 2-2, it's against your rival, it's, in the last 10 minutes, he started pointing to his head, and he snapped back into, all right, we got what we wanted here, we're back to 2-2, we've got to be smart, we've got to keep our heads and play and deal with this. That's where I felt like, okay, this is a different group now. Some of that's down to McKennie playing at Juventus, Pulisic playing at Chelsea, Giorena playing at Dortmund. Like, that helps these guys in these situations. But it is a group with a different mentality, and I think they're able to combine in a way that we've never seen for the U.S. across the board. A higher level of talent without losing that fighting attitude. You go back to the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s when the U.S. was not as talented as Mexico or even in some cases as Costa Rica or Honduras or other teams in Concacaf. They made up that ground with fight, with hustle, with hard work, with all of those things. If you're able now to combine at higher level of talent to the point that Mexican media coming into this game was like, wait a minute, they've got guys Chelsea and Dortmund and Juve, and we've got guys at nice clubs, but not like that. Maybe they are going to become more talented than us. That's the Mexican media coming into the game. But they felt like they had their trump card of dealing with the pressure, dealing with the mentality. They didn't in this one. The U.S. was able to find their way to deal with it, and it looked like the Mexican team that was melting down. It looked a lot at times like the 2002 World Cup round of 16 match, where Mexico absolutely lost their heads against the U.S., and the U.S. looked like the more composed team in the big moments. It's a nice flip to see, and it's something that we haven't seen for the U.S. in quite a while. Jarrett, who else stood out to you for the U.S. watching this one?
Obviously Horvath coming in. The thing you talk about pointing to your head, the thing I remember about that is on Mexico's penalty, just the, let's call it gamesmanship that everyone does, especially in these rivalry games where you have that penalty and everyone's standing in the box, referees asking guys 4 and 5 times to clear the space. And at one point, Christian Pulisic steps in and kind of disrupts Guardado's prep as he's standing there. Everyone else comes stumbling in there too. And as everyone is stumbling and shoving, Pulisic takes a couple steps away from the pile, looks at Horvath, points at his brain or his eyes, and is just kind of reinforcing it for Horvath of, giving him another chance to kind of, you've seen Guardado step up. It's almost, I guess if I want to cross parallels, it's almost like making a pivot throw to second base you got a runner on second baseball if you're the pitcher to see if the batter will tip his hand. And it almost felt like Pulisic was seeing if Guardado would tip his hand a bit. And then he steps in, gets in a situation where he could be carded, get yelled at, get shoved, whatever. And then he gets out of it. And he's looking at Horvath saying, pick up what you've seen, use it here. It's savvy, and I really loved it from him. He may not be the captain of this team, and I'm with you. I think McKennie is that guy who is the captain, but I'm glad to see not just the captain stepping up and taking those moments of I'm going to disrupt things a bit, take advantage of this. We've all got to do our part here to kind of disrupt and find these moments where we can find a little bit of an advantage. Because I guarantee you, everyone else is going to do it to you. You cannot play the high and mighty white knight of honor, especially in these games like this, especially in these finals, and especially in CONCACAF all around. You can't sit there and say we're going to take the moral high ground as we win. I promise you, it is admirable in a sense, but it ain't how you win trophies.
It's not real life, not in CONCACAF, not in the world of soccer. What's also not real life is getting a clean run up on a penalty in a situation like this one, because if you go back and look at the area next to the spot where Christian Pulisic's going to put his plant foot, it had been kicked up so badly by the Mexican players while that was being delayed. Getting in somebody's face, delaying a penalty, that's one thing. Actually damaging the pitch is another.
Work the turf.
But it happened.
Well, I mean, that's a team effort. I'm going to have one or two guys talking to the ref and keep everybody distracted, and I'm going to have another guy over there while everyone's distracted scuffing the absolute hell out of the dirt.
Yeah, it's beyond scuffing it. Like there was no grass on that point. I noticed it and was like, oh boy. And Marisa Dew pointed it out as a credit to Mo. I thought Dre Cordero and Mo Adu were great on the call. It was a lot of fun listening back to it. I got home in time from the Twos game to watch the madness of extra time and went back and watched the second half. We saw a little bit of the first half, but watched the second half this morning. So the great call, great presentation all the way around. I know there was a weird moment in the pregame that I did not get to see with a comment that was made that was apologized for, I believe. That's been pretty widely shared. No idea what happened with that. But it was rectified, it sounds like, so that's good. In general, I thought the presentation was great from CBS. It was a lot of fun to watch. It captured the moment in the way that it needed to be captured. Now, there are some problems with everything that happened last night. First off, there was a pause because of the homophobic chant that is still making its way around in Mexican games. It has gotten better. There's really not a whole lot of denial of that because it used to be a lot worse. It is a tough spot for referees to be in, especially in a final, because the last thing you want to do is pull players off the field and stop it in that situation. It's rough. Coco, it's hard to say. Like, I don't know if it ever 100% goes away because I think it comes back when people get frustrated, but I hope that over a few generations it goes away, and I feel like maybe that's part of this process. It is probably going to take something very significant, although it's a tough decision for a referee to make. It's a tough decision for a governing body to make to punish. FIFA hasn't really done a whole lot in this way in these situations. It's been a lot of slaps on the wrist. But it's a problem. I think Mexican players have really worked hard to try to get that out of the game and done a lot of commentary and PSAs about it. So there was a stoppage for that, 3 minutes. Players on both sides pleaded with the crowd to stop doing it. That's one thing. Greg Berhalter on the things that were thrown on the field after Pulisic's go-ahead goal. He said, total lack of respect for what's happening on the field and all effort that both teams are putting into the game. Talking about Gio Reyna, I think he's going to be okay, but he did take something to the head, and it could have been a lot worse. I thought it was a lot worse, seeing him being helped off and not looking like he knew where he was. That was scary because we've seen this, sadly, a bunch of places, including the Georgia Dome. It has happened plenty, and look, lately it's been an issue with fans across all sports. It hasn't just been Mexican soccer fans. So one thing that I would like to make very clear in this, because I've seen a lot of awful things from both sides today, it's a great rivalry, and it's great for both teams. But Mexican fans throwing things doesn't mean all Mexican fans are horrible people. Some Mexican fans saying things doesn't mean all Mexican fans are horrible people, and it definitely doesn't mean all Mexicans are horrible people. I have a huge issue with this. I've said this before on the show. Like, people get really bent out of shape about things like Landon Donovan doing the Wells Fargo commercial for the World Cup last time. How could he do that? I coached a team of Mexican boys with soccer in the streets for a number of years. And, we had fun with trash talking back and forth when the U.S. and Mexico would play. We had, fun little bets on it, different things. I had to wear a Mexico shirt for one training session. U.S. lost the final. I had to cook tacos for everybody. I mean, stuff like that. That's fun. But I don't have the animosity at times bordering on hatred that people then go way too far with and take it off the field and take it about people coming from a certain country. You don't really look any better when people do that. That's an issue at times in the U.S. fan base, and it's got to stop. It doesn't make anything better. It doesn't make you look better when those things happen. This is a great rivalry that's always going to be intense, and it needs to be intense because it helps both teams be better. But there's problematic behavior on both sides of it, and it needs to stop. Fighting stupid things with stupid things isn't really a good strategy. So it's incredibly frustrating. This is something that Concacaf is going to struggle with because of the way that they're constructed. It's something that in this case, in my opinion, in the cities where the games are had, when people throw things on the field, they should be arrested. There's just no way around it, because the idea that, oh, well, it's plastic cups or it's throwing, water bottles on the field. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy until somebody has a full can of beer and chucks it at a player and hits him in the head and gives him a concussion. You don't get to go around and ask everybody, like, hey, what are you throwing? What are you throwing? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's paper. That's cool. Oh, no, you can't do that. That's not nice. It's already been thrown. So, no, there's no acceptability of anything being thrown from the stands. You throw things from the stands in any stadium, anywhere in the world, arrest them. Local police, arrest them. Ban them from coming back to the stadium. Do it. That's not even a CONCACAF thing. That's a local stadium thing. Arrest them, ban them, boom. The security, it has been an issue with CONCACAF consistently. It was an issue here at the Georgia Dome in 2015. It's been an issue in a lot of venues. I don't know if that's a CONCACAF thing. I don't know if it's a security thing in all these different venues, but there's so many different venues that have had these issues. It's got to stop. And it's more than just a CONCACAF and US-Mexico thing, too. I mean, we've seen this in other sports here lately, with people spitting on Trae Young, with guys trying to run out on the court in one game. I mean, it's out of control fan behavior, and the only way it gets dealt with across the board is arrest and is banning, period. That's it. Because it really ticks me off to have to spend time on it this morning, because there's so many things from the game that were interesting and exciting and flashpoints, and it's great. This is the stuff that it just holds it back. It's not fun. I know there's this perverse, like, ooh, look at what happened here. Ooh, look at them acting crazy. Ooh. It's not good for the game. It's not good for people's safety. It's got to be eliminated from it. And I think it's beyond a CONCACAF situation. It is local police. It is stadium management identifying people, arresting people, and banning people from returning to their venue for good, and making that very, very public. So then when people get agitated about a call or get agitated because their team gave up a goal and they throw something on the field, they know what the consequences are. Right now, probably think it's a slap on the wrist, probably think it might be a fine, probably think you're not going to get identified. There's enough cameras in these venues now to where these things can be identified. Get it done and start punishing these folks, or this is only going to continue to get worse. And next time when people run on the field at the end of the game, they're not going to run on the field just to run around and act like idiots. They're going to run and try to jump on somebody who did something they didn't like. And that has to be cut out now, because it's not going to go away on its own.
Michael Valverde in this morning, and he says some fans can get out of control and overzealous, and he wanted to know what practical steps could leagues take to avoid projectiles from hitting players.
I don't think it's leagues.
Dealt with.
I don't think it's leagues. I think it's stadiums. I think it's local police. Because, I mean, the leagues aren't police forces. Like, they need to back it up. They need to then, when somebody is banned from a stadium for throwing something on the field at a player, the league then needs to go, oh, okay, they've been identified, they've been banned, they've had their time in court, they're banned from all league activities.
Spread the word.
Spread the word. Ban them. Like, ban them. They're not allowed to come to any games, period, anywhere. They can't go follow a team on the road. They can't show up in another stadium. I know that's hard to enforce. It's very difficult to enforce. But you have to start somewhere. That's the way to do it. Make it at least feel like these people will not be able to attend a game for the rest of their lives for doing this stuff. They have to.
FC Waffles in this morning. This is in the top 4 soccer games I've watched in my lifetime. Where do you place this match in Mount Rushmore? Soccer game?
It's not Mount Rushmore for me because of the stakes of it. It does elevate the CONCACAF Nations League into something bigger than it was when it started, which is good, because with World Cup qualification changing in future cycles, I mean, we're talking like the 2030 cycle, but that's when it'll be into the new normal in CONCACAF. the U.S.-Mexico World Cup qualifiers aren't going to be as meaningful, and that's not good for these teams. They need those games. And if Nations League becomes the spot where you have high-stakes matches between the U.S. and Mexico, okay, good. It's good that the competition means more. But in terms of just overall craziness, yeah, it's absolutely up there. But in terms of like biggest games I've ever watched, it's not as high because it's not as big of a platform. I would even put the U.S.-Mexico round of 16 in 2002 higher because of the stakes of it. I mean, it's a World Cup knockout round game, which has only happened once between the two, and the U.S. dominated it and won it. That was amazing.
Even though they lost, can I give you the 2011 Gold Cup final that Giovanni Dos Santos just made his own? Even though U.S. lost that game was absolutely off the rails, and Dos Santos gave a masterclass.
That was a wild game. The 2007 Gold Cup final between the two was a wild game with Benny Feilhaber's goal of his life on the volley. It was amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a wild, crazy game last night. It's not at the same level as a Gold Cup final yet, but I think the Nations League is now on the map and is now a much bigger deal, and that's a good thing because with just the changes to World Cup qualifying and it being easier to get in and probably a different format entirely because of that, you're not going to be guaranteed those high-stakes qualifiers with U.S. and Mexico anymore. This is good to have another way to get to that.
Nathan Pugh is in this morning. He says, it was good to hear USA chants. Haven't had much of that positivity in the last while. Down with Eltree, up the Americans. Hashtag Monday, Monday, Monday.
Yeah, no, like I said, like the whole like down with Eltree thing, I get conflicted about it because I have a lot of friends who are wonderful Mexican fans. And it's not personal for me, this rivalry. I know it is for a lot of people, and I think maybe that gets overblown a little bit. But it was cool to hear both. It is an issue, and I'm sure people watching from other countries who don't know how this rivalry has gone, how these games go, are a little confused about it really feeling like, and watching Mexican fans in the United States throw things at United States players and U.S. players shushing the crowd in the United States. That's a weird dynamic. It's probably the most unique dynamic in the world of soccer like this, but it's real. And it's a crazy thing. I do hope that we get to a point where it is at least 50-50 in these situations when it's a Concacaf game and it's not a U.S. World Cup qualifier where they can control the ticketing. I hope we get there because this team, the way they're playing right now, the talent they have, they deserve that support, and I hope they get it. And I hope the U.S. soccer fan base, gets up and supports this group.
South Georgia United's in this morning. Awesome win last night, and he has an overreaction for Monday. He says, my overreaction is we go all the way to the World Cup final.
That's an overreaction. I don't, you get 3 goals from set pieces. I'm not going there yet, but they showed that they have the guts in tight games to find a way through, and that's a really good sign. But they've got to be better in the run of play. To get to that level, you've got to beat teams like Mexico comfortably. And they're not doing that yet. And they're not expected to do that right now. I think they can. And going into 2022, it's going to be interesting to see where they go from today to game 1 of 2022, of course, assuming they qualify, and how we really feel about what the likelihood is. And then, again, a lot of it is on the draw. A lot of it, you can come in, like 2006, the U.S. came in and probably you felt better about that group going into that World Cup than realistically I think anybody did going into 2002. Realistically, anybody did maybe going into 2010. The 2006 group breezed through qualifying and looked really strong. And then they got a horrible draw. And, had Germany in the group, but had the Czech Republic in the group, who was like that sneaky high seed. I think they were a number 3 ranked team in the world at that point. It was a brutal group. And, the team that won the tournament in Italy. That's your group. It was awful. It was awful, and that's just the draw. That's what happens. So, or sorry, no, it was Ghana, not Germany. My bad. I'm mixing it up. But it was a very difficult draw, and it derailed that group. So you've got to get a good draw. They've got to continue to develop. They've got to produce more from the run of play. But, yeah, I feel better about them, a lot better about them after last night.
DKB's in with a couple of thoughts this morning. One, no goalkeeper in the world saves Pulisic's penalty. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, he hammers it. I mean, the only way somebody's saving it is if they've seen it and they know it's going there and they guess and they still get there fast enough. I mean, it's a gutsy penalty from Pulisic. The flip side is not a lot of players can hit that penalty consistently with that quality that Pulisic hit that with.
Ethan Horvath might have just taken the starting spot from Stefan.
That's an overreaction. He should be in the competition. I thought Bart was absolutely correct on Friday when we talked about this. It shouldn't be handed to Zach Steffen, period. I think Ethan Horvath absolutely deserves to compete here. Ethan Horvath has to sort out his club situation, and he has to get to a club where he's going to play consistently because he has the game to be the number one for the U.S. He does. And Steffen has been good at moments, but he's also been a bit of a disaster at moments too. So I don't think he's a lock for the number one spot by any stretch.
Miles Robinson should have been starting in this back line instead of McKenzie or Ream. Neither are better 1v1 and fit as well in that system.
Ream's a completely different situation because he was your pseudo left back at times with the way that, the idea coming into it was. So Ream's a different situation. I said it before, and I'll continue to say it. I think Miles Robinson should be starting next to John Brooks. I think Mark McKenzie's a very good player. He made a big mistake early. He rebounded very well, but I think Miles Robinson's better in that situation. Ream's a little bit different, and that's going to be something that Berhalter's going to have to figure out because I don't know if Ream is really able to stay at this level at this point. He's been a valuable piece. He's had a great career at Fulham. He gives you the versatility of being a center back that can slide over to left back. But I think it showed on the Lainez goal. I don't think he's at this level anymore. And if that's the case, that's fine. You don't have to replace him like for like, but it does take away something that Berhalter's like to have, that ability to have a center back who can turn into an outside back and make it work. Coco said Stefan also has to sort out his club situation. No, it's not that simple, Coco. Like, he doesn't need to leave Manchester City, but he needs to figure out if he's going to play, which he's not this year, and if they're going to allow him to go out on loan to play elsewhere, because he should stay under contract at Manchester City as long as he can, because it's a good situation to be, and they probably think he can turn into the possible number one. I don't think he was there this year if they didn't think that. They're not going to give him those cup games if they don't think that. But he's also at a point in this year going into a World Cup cycle where he's got to be playing rather than being the number two. He went there. He was out on loan. He played. This past year, he was with the first team the whole time. He trained. He got the cup games. That's good. That's good. But this year, he's got to go out and play. I don't think it's the same situation as sorting out the club situation. He needs to sort out his playing time situation more than anything. He doesn't need to force a move from Manchester City. He probably needs to force a loan away. And they've got to make sure they've got somebody who can fulfill his role on the team, who can play those cup games and be the number two.
A couple of other points from DKB real quick. He says that Berhalter crushed the tactics for the most part.
He crushed the adjustments. I mean, I know what he was going for at the beginning. I get it. It didn't really work as well, and I think they made adjustments as they went. So that's the game. That's how it goes. Like, great managers don't always get it right. Everybody's heard what people said about Pep Guardiola in the Champions League final. There were definitely questions about his tactics in that game. It's not like he came up with them by throwing darts at a dartboard to seeing what happens. But, yeah, like, good managers get tactics wrong. The great managers make the proper adjustments when they see that it's wrong. And I think Berhalter made the right adjustments. I think Berhalter's really developing in this role. and getting to know his group. He missed a year with this young group of really getting to know who could handle what situations, who could adjust to what. He's having to figure it out on the fly, and look, he lifted a trophy. He lifted a trophy that I didn't expect him to lift, so you take it. Jarrett, how do you feel about Berhalter?
Much better than I did a year ago. I think a lot of it is because of that feeling of nepotism that came with the hire because of his brother being there. And it's not to say that Greg isn't a good coach. I think he's a really good coach. Other coaches think he's a good coach. He did well in MLS. He knows not like he doesn't know what he was doing, but it did kind of feel like nepotism that because his brother was there, like it just kind of felt like it was handed. And so I think that kind of puts like more pressure on. Okay, well, it's yours, but you got to make this amazing. And it wasn't at first, but he has seemed to have figured out how he wants to run this. And I see no reason why you shouldn't be very excited for this cycle unless you just are choosing to be terrified of the cycle on principle.
Burns says never understood Stefan to City. Not good enough, poor fit. I'm sure City is aware of it. I got to disagree, Burn, because I thought that too at the initial signing, but they wouldn't have made him the number 2 out of pity last year. I think they did that because they do see something in him. He has grown. He's a lot better with distribution than he was when he went there. I do question if he'll ever be good enough to be their number 1 at the level that they're at. He might not be. But I don't think they just think he's not good enough. I disagree because I don't think they would have had him as the number 2 just because last year. And I don't think he let them down either. I don't think he let them down in that role. It is a different situation this year for him, though. Like, he's got to be playing going into 14 World Cup qualifiers. He has to be playing consistently. He can't be sitting the bench, then coming in and playing 3 games for the U.S. and sitting the bench, then playing 3 more games. Like, that's not going to work. Not going to be sharp. So we will see what happens there. What else do we have on Twitter, John?
DKB wrapped it up by saying, man, it was great to see the U.S. beat Mexico for a change. Tafka has some takeaways as well. I'll go to the ones that are different from ones that we haven't talked about so far. Tafka says that Tim Ream has seen his last competitive international match.
Probably. And Tim Ream's going to be one of these guys who never gets any credit and people trash all the time. Tim Ream has had a really good career for himself in England. Is he the best American defender of all time? No, he's not. But he's going to get put into that kind of Jeff Agus conversation as a guy that you only remember the mistakes and don't remember the good performances that he's had and the leadership he brought to this young group. I do think, though, that it is time at the elite level to move on. And if you want to play 3 center backs, you've got to figure out a different configuration.
Tafka says the team grew up big time in the past 2 hours. This was the heart and grit of older teams, like you were mentioning earlier. He says when they build the chemistry and get comfortable in the system, it'll be something to watch.
But it didn't just happen over the 2 hours of the game. And that's something that I think people need to go back and maybe think about because, man, there were some fiery takes coming out there after Mexico scored in the second minute. There were some really feisty things being said. Game's 90 minutes, except in Concacaf when it could be 120 or it could be 193. They might still be playing at this point for all we know. It's not a 2-minute game. The snap to judgment, I get it. I know we're all passionate. We all get crazy about this stuff sometimes, but think before hitting that tweet button until at least after the game because sometimes those things will come back to bite you. They'll end up on what Old Takes Exposed. So, just don't overreact. Like, this team wasn't a bunch of bums before the game, and then all of a sudden, like, the magic fairy dust came on and they grew up. It's been a process. I didn't think they'd be this far yet. And it's a credit to Berhalter. It's a credit to the players. It's a credit to the leadership within the group to win the game the way they did last night. But that didn't happen out of thin air. It had been building to that. And that credit has to be given as well.
Tafka says, damn, we deep. Weah, Musa, Aronson, Pifok.
Got to get a number 9 established, though. The deep squad is really good, but this is a problem Mexico's got as well with Raul Jimenez out. They've got a striker that I think is proven to be pretty elite. Maybe Alan Pulido steps into that role if he keeps playing the way he has at Kansas City, but the U.S. has to get somebody established there. It's the missing piece. And is it Pifak, who it's not Jordan Sibachu if you haven't seen his Twitter. It's Jordan or Jordy Pifak. Is it him? Is it Josh Sargent? Is it somebody else entirely? That feels like the missing element because, the goals last night come from the other guys. Pulisic from the spot. Again, these are all from set pieces too. Reyna on a deflection and McKinney on a header. Like, the number 9s weren't really all that productive. Daryl Dike, it could be, but nobody has grabbed that spot just yet. They just haven't. That feels like the missing element. The deep squad is really good. You can only play 11, and right now there's a big question at one of those spots and a critical spot.
And the last point from Taka reinforcing what we've been talking about this morning. Miles Robinson should be in the group, period.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't want to rate MLS highly enough, whatever, they're missing out. If Kellen Acosta can play significant minutes here in a big role and do very well, yeah, Miles Robinson can handle himself in this. And he should have been there. He should have been in the squad. I think he should have been starting. I think he is the number 2 right now with John Brooks. I think that should be the center back pairing for the U.S.
Michael Valverde's back in, and he says, let's get out of CONCACAF ASAP. Can we petition to join a region where real soccer is played, officiated, and manages players' safety? The men's national team can't progress here. Make the Nations League win our final game, even if we fail to qualify. It's better in the long run.
No, it's not that simple. You can't just go join somebody else. And, I mean, the only one you join is CONMEBOL, and they're not going to accept U.S. Soccer in after the FBI put a bunch of their higher-ups behind bars or fined them or what have you. Like, that's not going to happen without a big merger between CONCACAF and CONMEBOL. And look, I mean, we see the CONCACAF stuff up close. CONMEBOL right now has a Copa America that's set to start in about a week. Allegedly. Possibly. Maybe. The Gold Cup's going to get played. We know that. The World Cup qualifying situation in CONMEBOL. I mean, they missed the March round because of everything going on. And the South American Confederation's huge. We'll come back to UEFA in a minute. They're not perfect either. But the Asian and the African confederations, I mean, there's all kinds of problems within those groups at different points. UEFA can't even get, which competition was it, Jarrett, that you got worked up about? Is it the World Cup qualifiers where they couldn't even get like VAR across the board?
Yes.
For World Cup qualifiers.
VAR or goal line tech. It's only available in some stadiums, but not all.
Yeah.
And directly impacted at least 2 games.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't check really blatant errors.
Mm-hmm.
That are going to impact. In like one of them was in the Dutch group. Go look at the Dutch group.
Yep.
The only reason I say the Dutch group is because I can't remember who else is in that group, but I know it's a tough group. You got what's going to be a group that comes down to probably the last window, and you got games getting decided because they decided not to put officiating like the VAR and goal line or goal line technology across the board. That's child's play.
Yeah.
That's a youth tournament.
Yep. It's, every confederation has its issues. They all have different issues. CONCACAF has some issues with professionalism, I think, below the elite levels, but that's actually improving. All of these confederations have different issues with fans and with supporters. Those are real issues across the board. There's all kinds of political issues across. Nobody's perfect in these situations. CONCACAF just has some different challenges from time to time. This is a game that is good for the U.S., even with all the craziness of it, because it will help them in other situations. But yeah, there's no perfect confederation, and they're not going to be allowed to join a different one anyway. It's just not going to happen. What Mexico, because they need to be involved in this as well, and the U.S. need to do is, I don't know if it's taking more control of CONCACAF, if they could even pull that off. Politically, it's very difficult because of the way the voting structure is. You've got, a whole slew of Caribbean countries that have the same vote as the United States, as Canada, as Mexico. And they don't always, as we've seen in CONCACAF politics with people getting locked up for different reasons, they don't always do things the right way. They do kind of look out for themselves from time to time or get bought off depending on who's doing the buying. Sadly, it's an issue worldwide. CONCACAF's not alone in that. And the stuff we saw last night has happened in other games in all places of the world. It's just something that we see a little more up close.
With the depth of the squad, the question is up. With Musa not getting any minutes and Aronson getting only a few, would they perhaps get Gold Cup squad?
It depends on their club situation because their preseasons will be starting, and it's just going to depend on if they're allowed to go. I don't think it's a guarantee for either. The federation's not going to anger some of the clubs for their Gold Cup call-ups, even though they could. They're not going to do it. The Gold Cup's later because this Nations League got pushed back. It was supposed to be last year. It got pushed back, so they had to push the Gold Cup back, which means it's at a very awkward time. You see the European Championships and Copa America earlier because that gives players some time off afterwards before they go into preseason. There's overlap with preseason for Gold Cup players, and that's going to make it a very difficult tournament for some countries and for some rosters. So I don't think it's a guarantee. It's going to be down to their club situation.
Colonel's in this morning, and he says the conversation about U.S. soccer didn't even call Tata can now cease. American coach, American players for an American team.
I've said it before, Colonel. I don't think it should be either way. I'm not hiring coaches based off where they were born. I'm hiring the right coach. The idea that Tata is a better coach just because he was not born in the United States is false, 100%. They should have talked to Tata. There's no way around that. They should have talked to him when he's interested in the job, and he has had success in World Cups, in Copa Americas, and with his career at that point, they should have talked to him. That was disrespectful, in my opinion. But they'd already made their decision. I don't know what the long-term process was with Greg Berhalter getting the job. I know they wanted to let the crew season end and then give him the job after that. I get some of the complications with all of that. But, yeah, they didn't really do a thorough search because I think they knew it was going to be Berhalter all along. Berhalter's not the right guy because he was born in the United States. We've seen it work in different countries around the world where foreign managers have come in and done well. It absolutely happens that way. But in this case, just because Tata Martino wanted the job doesn't make him 100% the right hire. They needed to talk to him. They needed to talk about what vision he had and make a decision. They didn't talk to him. That part's wrong, in my opinion. But I don't know if they got the hire wrong.
Tafka says, I don't know if anyone else saw it, in quotation marks, but after the match, Horvath looked like a man who knew his life had just changed dramatically in the matter of 2 hours. Not sure where his agent was, but it felt very Rod Tidwell, Jerry Maguire to me.
It did. He had the same look as he did with, who is it, John?
Oh, Club Brugge.
Yeah, thank you. When he got a chance to play because of a COVID positive and had a great match. He knows that this could, set him up. It was a different conversation before the game and after the game as to what his next club could be. By the way, Merritt Paulson revealed that the Portland Timbers have tried to sign Ethan Horvath multiple times. I don't know where he'll go. Be very curious to see where he lands, but I think it'll be a better spot than it was before this game started. Jarrett, you got a couple more minutes before I know you have to leave us. Is there anything else on the board about last night's match that we have not talked about yet? Or do you want to go ahead and throw your thoughts in about the twos that you didn't throw in on the twos review from last night?
No, not really. I think we've covered everything with the U.S. national team match. It's a gutsy win, and I think y'all hit it. It's the idea that you can play multiple ways, which is, I think, what every coach wants. To have that option of, for sure, we can play with the ball. We can We can play, we can hold the ball. We can can dictate the pace and dictate things. We can also get this done on set pieces and be more dangerous without the ball if we need to be. We can be adjustable. And that conversation carries over with the twos last night. Because the twos didn't have the ball for most of the second half. They didn't play the way they wanted to play. They adjusted and got out of there with a win.
Yeah, they played the way the match dictated they needed to play. And that's what the best teams do. I mean, you don't lose your identity, you don't lose your DNA, you don't, go away from that entirely as a whole. But yeah, some games you're not going to be able to do exactly what you want, and got to find a way. You just have to continue to try to find a way and do it. So the twos did it last night, different way, but they found a way to hold on against Lou City, who was literally throwing everything at the twos, including forearms and elbows and studs up tackles. And they handled it. The kids handled it, and they got a great result. It's one that can lift them going forward, absolutely. And the U.S., I think that's a result last night that lifts them going into World Cup qualifying. That's something that will give McKinney and Reyna and Pulisic and that group that muscle memory of, we were at home kind of, but Reyna got popped with a beer can in the head and got knocked silly, and we still found a way to hold on and win that thing. So we can do this in Trinidad or Guatemala or Jamaica. Not Trinidad this cycle, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Herrera, who spiked a goalkeeper, choked a guy, and then went studs up in the span of like 5 minutes and didn't get sent off.
It was impressive.
Tom pulled him off. I was like, I need to get you out of here now.
Yes. The laughter from the 2-day NA call on the last studs up challenge, where it's like, it's a yellow. It's an easy yellow. Could have been red. That says it all. All right, Jarrett, thanks for hanging out. We'll talk to you soon. Are you going to be with us tomorrow?
I hope so.
Tonight?
Maybe tonight. Sometimes he's not here in the evening time.
It depends. It's kind of swinging through the rafters.
That's always dangerous. That's always a
You're
problem.
right.
Pro Jarrett.
I don't have insurance for this.
Yeah, don't do that. Be careful.
Okay. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.
Jarrett Smith leaving. We'll get Bart Keeler here shortly. John, you are going to first tell us about our good friend Steve Apolinsky in Decatur, GA.
Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here and the SDH network for wrongful death and serious injury matters. One place you need to go. It's Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. 3 different ways that you can do it. You can pick up the phone, get a free consultation, 404-377-9191. You can shoot Steve an email directly, steve at aa-legal.com, or you can go on the World Wide Web, large device or small. Type in aa-legal.com into the address bar, hit the enter key, the return key, the arrow key, whatever advances you to the homepage for Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, and you can take a look at all the different cases they can handle for you by using the pull-down tabs. You can take a look at all the awards that they have won in their over 30 years of taking care of cases, garnering over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. 2 different time zones in play, the Eastern and the Central. And if you still have questions after the pull-down tabs, and if you still have questions after looking at all the awards that they have won, there's a pop-up window that will be there for you, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, they are recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. It is Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, and the website is aa-legal.com.
Little long.
It was.
A little. Not bad. All right, we will see what the people think while Mateo dials up Bart. -2, too much hands.
What?
5.5, 7.5. Are you going to argue now? It's not going to go well, John. Too much hand movement from 2 people. 7.9, 8 out of 10 because McKinney wears 8 and should be the captain in perpetuity. 10 out of 10 for the Pulisic beer shower last night. Well, it's Monday. John was out of town, a little off, weird pauses, hands for drop down, hands for many things. Average 5.7. John slowly rolled himself down from a 10 out of 10 to a 3 out of 10.
Wow, Mr. Fantastic's been hanging out in Eastern Europe.
6.4, 5.56, 7 out of 10, too many hand motions. 10 out of 10, go USA. 8.2, smooth. Pretty good until you pause, then 8. Yeah, not the best of scores, John, but not horrible. It's a little disappointing coming off of an emotional win for the U.S. last night. I wonder what kind of score Bart Keeler would give you.
We're just going 10s across the board this morning because it is that type of day and that type of morning.
Yeah, I was wondering if you would be alive and awake and maybe recovered somewhat.
I could do all things through coffee and petty.
A lot of petty about last night, and we'll continue to talk about that. I do want to get into the player ratings. That's kind of a good way to look back at the match a little bit and kind of go through some individual performances. But, I said earlier, Bart, like the biggest takeaway for me was the mentality and the kind of throwback to that fighting spirit that we've seen the national team have in the past. And they maybe lost for a while, and I think guys like McKennie and Pulisic and Reyna have grabbed that and brought it back. I thought McKennie was, the leader that this team needs. What was your biggest takeaway from last night?
Well, so my biggest takeaway from last night in total was just that they won. And that sounds really simple, but I was critical of Berhalter and this team as a whole for looking like they were not as committed to winning as much as they were the thought exercise of playing soccer in this system. Last night, I will have to say that those first 25, 30 minutes were not good. And they figured out a way to compose themselves, especially in that second half where I think they looked a lot better. And I really think that they looked pretty darn good in the extra time periods. And I have to applaud that they figured out a way to come together and win. But let's not pretend like this was a great U.S. men's national team performance. But how many great performances have we seen from the U.S. in a match against Mexico? It seems like, style and flair and quality of performance has to go out the window when you play El Tri, and your goal is to just win.
Yeah, I've got one great performance against Mexico lifetime, the 2002 World Cup round of 16, where it was a great performance.
That's literally it.
There's other wins, or other big results, even at the Azteca, but not great performances. That was a great performance. This wasn't, but I think it was a great fight, and that's part of winning.
Right.
So Zach Steffen gets injured. Ethan Horvath comes in. He had to find 21 tickets because he was raised, I think, 10 minutes south of Denver.
Yep.
And he comes in and has Tafka said it was the Rod Tidwell, Jerry Maguire moment last night, where it's like he could tell that things might be a little different for Ethan Horvath coming out the other side. But, you have to give Ethan Horvath a boatload of credit for coming in, even though, yes, you're a part of, warm-ups and everything, and you studied PKs with the other keepers ahead of time. But you have to give Ethan Horvath a boatload of credit for parachuting into one of the toughest situations possible and coming out the other side the way that he did.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Ethan Horvath right now. To be quite honest, I thought he looked pretty darn good in that Switzerland friendly. I think it's been really unfortunate that he hasn't played more at Bruges. I think that, he's been at that club for a while. He came in to be their starter, and getting bounced by, Mignolet was really unfortunate for him, but I'm really hopeful that this performance and these two performances, both in this final and that Switzerland friendly, do a lot. His contract ends I think June 30th, so he's out of contract with Bruges, and I really do think that he deserves to be a starter in a European league. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to the Premier League, but you can be a starter in Belgium, in Netherlands. Maybe he goes to Denmark. Actually, there are a couple of Danish teams that have some older goalkeepers that might want to look at a guy like Horvath to, be a solid starter for the next 10 years because or maybe 5 years at least, because he's not that old. I really am high on Horvath. I'd like to say he's the new U.S. #1, but I think it's, there's a lot of things that go into determining that. And we still haven't seen one guy who everyone seems very high on, and we'll see him in the Gold Cup. That's Matt Turner. So, I think there's not a clear-cut U.S. #1. Again, I'm still a little concerned that none of them are bald, but Horvath at least has the buzz cut, and that's close to it.
It's close. I mean, he could shave it down if he needed to, if it's going to give him that extra bit of a boost. I'm sure he could shave his head. We'll be okay if we have to go down that direction. Let's get into these ratings a little bit. So we'll start with the starters, and I know there were adjustments. I say this all the time, but we get way too hung up on formation and positions, and I think Berhalter's style is not as free-flowing as Gabriel Heinze, for example, or others, but there is a flow to it. So, a guy like Tim Ream has a specific kind of role. I think he struggled last night, but we'll get there in a second. Stefan got a 6 for his 67 minutes. He didn't make any big mistakes. He didn't have any big misjudgments, so that feels all right to me. Any issues with Stefan before he was injured?
Yeah, I mean, this is really nitpicking, but as a member of the goalkeeper union, I felt like there were a couple of times with his feet passing out of the back where he was just a little too slow, and there were a couple of times specifically. I forget the timestamp, but it was definitely in the second half early on where he received a ball facing forward the whole field, had to take a touch to turn to pass to McKenzie, and that slowed everything down. And it's like that's the time where you need to either turn with your touch or be ready to distribute on that half turn because it's a no dove where you're going. Mm-hmm. But when you have to take that touch, well, now a Mexican player is that much closer to the guy you're trying to pass to. And there were little moments like that from Stefan that I do want to be in. I need to see that improve. And I don't think that's a game. I don't think that's a playing time situation because you should be doing that in training. And I assume that he's getting practice building out of the back with Guardiola at Man City. So that is still a little concerning for Stefan. But overall, from a goalkeeping perspective, it was pretty good from Stefan.
Yeah, I'm with you on the distribution and playing as a field player. It still concerns me. I think he has improved, but it's not where I think Greg Berhalter even wants it to be. And if somebody, I don't know if Horvath is demonstrably better in that or anybody else in the pool. Maybe Ochoa is the one who has the potential to be that guy, but he's not there yet either because of his age and experience level. No. So there's
no Nick Raimondo in this goalkeeping.
Yeah,
pool.
That's a good one. That would be the guy. Like he would have really gotten the shots if he was just a little bit younger. Came through at a bad time and with the wrong managers for him to get that playing time. All right, 3 center backs. McKenzie got a 5, Brooks got a 6, Ream got a 4. That feels about right to me. Any issues with that group?
I think you are aware of my feelings on Tim Ream, and I do think that this is the last time we've seen. I won't say the last time. I think he could play a role in World Cup qualifying because you're going to need a million people.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we'll talk about Berhalter in a minute, but Tim Ream was the biggest issue I had with this match and with Greg Berhalter specifically. But I thought center backs were fine. Look, Mark McKenzie made a mistake at the beginning.
He did.
I think that was more indicative of the team as a whole coming out without that urgency that we needed in a final. And, it was a bad pass. It probably was one of those times, too, where, there's a whole Twitter account for it when playing out of the back goes wrong.
Yeah, I hate that Twitter account.
It wasn't quite that, but it was one of those where you go, look, it's the first minute of play. It's a final. It doesn't always have to be pretty. Put the ball upfield.
Yeah. Definitely. You've got to find that situation and reading it. And it's tough, because the U.S. is trying to play a certain way, and you don't want to abandon it. You don't want to rush to abandon it, but yeah, at times you need to ease into it. And McKenzie made a huge mistake. If you wanted to ding his score because of the huge mistake, which was a huge mistake, that's fine. I do think he recovered.
But other than that, I thought he was good.
Yeah, I thought he recovered pretty well. Ream just couldn't keep up and gave up, not solely. I think he thought he was getting more help on the inside, but it's on Ream, the second goal that gave Mexico the 2-1 lead. That's a huge problem. Let's go wingbacks next.
We'll probably break that down.
What's that? Yeah.
We could probably break that down, that goal from Lina's. I mean, we can look at everyone who made a mistake, but Tim Ream did not look great.
He was the biggest one of the batch. The wingbacks, because the idea was, to have 3 center backs and 2 wingbacks. DeAndre Yedlin got the start here. Serginho Dest. Both got 5s. Feels about right.
Yeah, there was some weird... Serginho Dest didn't have a great game, but I still think that he was pretty good, and I thought Yedlin actually showed pretty decently as well. So I'm okay with a 5. That's an average score. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, average from both. Central midfielders, Acosta got a 6, McKinney got an 8.
I thought our central mids were okay for the most part. I think that McKinney deserves credit for his presence on set pieces. Mexico is a team that's going to cause problems for your central midfielders because they're going to both attack you directly but also pull you wide and move you around in the middle. And, I don't think anyone can fully deal with that. But I thought overall it was okay.
Yeah, with not being 100% in the holding midfield, Acosta did well. And I think
I have to say that, yeah. Acosta was surprisingly okay. And full credit to him for filling in at left back during, after Tim Ream came off, because we saw him do that at Colorado, and no offense to him, it wasn't working for Colorado. He's not, necessarily a left back, but he did quite fine at that position.
Coco, watching on Twitch, thought you were headed into USMNT national team headquarters to make sure Ream was off the squad for good.
Yeah, well, there are other players other center backs who are younger. Chris Richards is one very specifically who probably would have been on this roster had he been healthy. And you talked about Miles Robinson earlier that no, they can't play left back. But as I've said repeatedly, just because you can doesn't mean you're going to be good at it. And when you're not, the versatility is cool, but you still have to be able to execute well. It's like a switch hitter in baseball. Just because you can technically hit from the left side, if you're hitting 150 from the left side, why are you hitting? Why are you going to?
Doesn't mean you should stick to being a switch hitter.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd rather go in the other situation. Yeah, we know Ream can play left back, but I'd rather see. All right, could Richards or Robinson play left back if you have to make those adjustments because they're going to be better at center back. Front 3, the wide players were the stars. Reyna with an 8, Pulisic with an 8, Sargent with a 5 out of the starters. What do you think of Josh Sargent?
It's a little harsh on Sargent. I don't think it's his fault that this game didn't see a whole lot because, we didn't. The chances that were afforded to him were half chances at best. There were a couple of times that I would have, you could say, oh, I think that the one, I forgot who had the shot. I think it was Dest or Pulisic from the left side that kind of caromed off, and it was a weird bounce that came to Sargent, but he was already outside of the goal frame when he took a hit, and it wasn't a very safe shot. It was, something he was going to have to make a worldie out of anyway, and he just skies it over. But could he have done better? Probably. But, it was a lot of nights of half chances that Sargent couldn't really create into something meaningful.
The substitutes, all of them got 5s for the field players. Weah, Pifok, Leggett, Adams, Cannon, Ethan Horvath got a 9, which... yeah, of course, he's going to get a ridiculous score like that because of what we saw from him. Out of the field players that were substitutes, did any of them stand out to you or change anything for you?
I actually thought Tim Weah was really good working up and down the left wing.
I did too.
Which, you're a sub. It's hard to be super impactful in a game, but a lot of them had a whole 30 minutes extra to be impactful. So, I thought Weah was actually surprisingly good going up and down that left side and helped out in defense. And I think, again, just adds – I want to see more of Tim Weah on this team because I think he adds something that, no offense to the other wingers, he has that they don't. And that's a little bit of pace and the ability to blow by a guy. We saw Pulisic and Reyna get a couple of steps ahead of a guy, and then those defenders caught up to him. That doesn't really happen with Tim Weah. He's going to get past you and go.
I will still bang the drum to see Tim Weah as the number 9 as a possibility.
We haven't found a 9 yet, so why not try it out?
Give it a shot, because then you have the pace, and he can interchange. He can drift out wide. Pulisic and Reyna both like to come inside, so that could be an interesting trio if you decide to go with it. And you're right, there is no 9 at this point. Last one for me before John jumps back in. Has your opinion changed about the upcoming World Cup qualifiers? I feel a little bit better about them going on the road and getting the results that they're going to have to go steal points in some places. I feel better after the mentality that we saw last night. Did anything change for you?
Yes and no. I think no, because the expectation was still there. And it was the expectation in 2018. It was the expectation in 2014. It was the expectation that since I've been following this team that I can remember since the 2002 qualifiers. You should qualify for the World Cup. You should be one of the top 2 teams in this region. I don't think that's changed. Now, to your point, I think that this gave me some confidence that we can maybe go to some, don't give me this crap about, it's a tough trip to Toronto, Canada. No, stop. They're polite. They're
not Tegucigalpa. Right. Come on now.
Right. It's not Tegucigalpa. It's not San Jose. It's not, Azteca. It's not even, if we have to go to Managua or even, Kingston, Jamaica. It's not going to be that. So it gives me hope that maybe we can get a result in Canada. It gives me hope that we can maybe get a result at one of those other qualifiers. That's where I think the pressure now for me is, can you get wins away at those teams who are going to have to qualify for that playoff? Because there is you look at the FIFA rankings, there's a significant drop-off from Costa Rica, Jamaica, even to Honduras, and the ones below them. So you should be able to find wins. And if you can find a win there, that takes some pressure off having to win every home match. Yeah. You can't lose home matches. You can't pull a Klinsmann and Bruce Arena and lose, home matches. But yes, the expectations have changed, or the hope has changed, because I think they showed a little bit better mettle. But the expectation is still the same. You qualify. Yeah.
All right. When was the last time you saw a ref deliver a no-look red card?
Yeah, that was. I don't know. I don't know if that was a Trae Young pass when he was being, pressed by 2 Philly players. But man, that was interesting. It's 100% deserved. Should have given a couple of other Mexico players red cards, in my opinion. How Herrera managed to game is an absolute war crime, in my opinion. But yeah, that was interesting. Fully deserved, but man, if you want me to talk about this referee, you're going to need a 3-hour show just for that.
Hey, it's an overreaction Monday, brother. And that was why I wanted to kind of lean into it. So is there an abridged version, considering that we have soccer over there tonight at 7?
The abridged version is this referee. I tweeted it out during the game that I don't think his calls were bad. I think for the most part he made the calls that were right. And even the penalty kicks, when I first saw the Christian Pulisic penalty and I even saw the replays, I was like, oh man, that's going to be harsh to give. And I felt that the handball on Kellen Acosta was super harsh to give. But, that is the benefit, I guess, of being able to look at it again. Because I think when he called both of those and didn't call them, he was completely right to not call them. Sure. I think he had other calls that he made during the match that made sense. But the way he managed the game absolutely gave Mexico every single advantage. And I know that they're going to complain about an offside that may or may not have been offside, but man, he gave Mexico players every inch that they possibly could take, and then more. And anytime a U.S. player, John Brooks got a card in the first 10 minutes because he dared to ask the referee why he called a foul, and yet every foul the Mexican players are rolling around. That was embarrassing, in my opinion, from Concacaf, to have a referee allow the Mexican players to act the way they did throughout the match. And then on top of that, have a player finish the match for the most part, who absolutely should have been given a red card for actual fouls committed during the match. It wasn't dissent, it wasn't antics, it was actual. The one on Horvath, absolutely. Then that last tackle, on top of what he did before that, putting his hands on McKinney's throat again. That's comical. That's terrible refereeing and comical from Concacaf that this continues to happen in USA-Mexico matches, and it's clear that there's not a referee who can handle it. It's very clear.
Yeah, I can't really think of a referee outside of the U.S. or Mexico because, I mean, look, those are the two leagues that are the biggest. They're the strongest. You know, it's something where I really think it would benefit the U.S. and Mexico and the region as a whole to do some exchange programs with referees, to have referees from Panama, from Jamaica, from Costa Rica, from Honduras, from all over the region come and work a couple weeks in MLS, go work a couple weeks in Liga MX to be able to handle these kinds of games because they don't get those games in their domestic competitions. They don't. U.S.-Mexico is kind of a unique animal of a match. It's tough.
It's not even, and excuse me for saying this, but it's not even Alajuelense and Saprissa because of the quality of players on the field.
Yeah, the pace.
Yeah, I mean, the pace of play, the quality of players, the tempo of the game is so different. And then you add that it's a final with, I think a 50% house in Denver with, 90% of Mexican fans cheering at you, 10% U.S. Like, it was very, I get it. It's intense. And having, being a referee myself, I get that, there are matches that you do feel out of control a little bit. But I don't think he ever felt he was out of control. And my last take really of this referee is he loves the dramatics. Holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
Both of those VAR penalty calls were as dramatic as you could possibly get. And John, to your point, the no-look red card was absolutely just a flair for the dramatic. And that also rubs me the wrong way.
Jason Nick says, I don't think either were penalties. I think they both could have not been penalties. They both could have been penalties. Like they're judgment calls. They're both tough judgment calls. I mean, I think the Pulisic one was a little clearer to me because of the hip check involved in it. I think the handball is a total judgment call, and his hand is away from his body. So, I mean, I do understand both calls live not being called and then being called when looking at it through VAR. I don't think those are the big flashpoints here.
I think that, and especially with the Pulisic one, when I watched it live, I was like, oh no, he just, it was one of those where you take a touch too heavy and a guy just kind of cuts you off, right? And it happens. But watching it back, I was like, okay, I see why he called this a penalty, because there were two players who seemed to make contact with Pulisic before the ball was taken away. The handball, I'm with you. Like, you probably could have not called it, but it definitely hits his hand that is extended away from the body. I don't know if he had a whole lot to have time to move his hand, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's tough.
Don't lie.
Also true. The thing Jason Nixon then said, and I do agree with him in general on the idea that judgment calls shouldn't be overturned by VAR, but what VAR gives the referee is a clearer look at times. Yes. And the Pulisic one especially, I don't know how good of a look he had live because of just the crowd of bodies, and the hip check is from the opposite side, so I don't know if he could have seen that part.
The VAR on Pulisic is the exact reason why the video review exists, because I thought the referee was in a pretty okay position to make that call. It certainly wasn't. So, getting into a little bit of referee mechanics,
no, it's
you have what you call your diagonal, and it basically goes from the corner flag opposite of one AR to the corner flag opposite of the other AR. So you make a left-hand diagonal in the attacking area. So where that foul occurred in the box was so far on the right side of the box. What you're trying to do is have the ball between you and your assistant referee, so that both of you have a decent enough chance to look at it. He actually, even as he probably should have, adjusted his diagonal well enough to get into a position to see it. But even then, as you said, there's players in the way. It's going at fast pace.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand him not wanting to call that in the middle of a game where, at the end of the day, Pulisic isn't really in on goal per se. It's not a clear and obvious dog so. It's not a clear and obvious foul for that until you see it on VAR. And that's where the video review really does help, because you're not going to be able to get those angles in live action because of how you have to also be in position to see everything else on the field.
Yeah, it does change the way these things are handled, and a final changes the way things are handled. And if you've watched games in Concacaf before, a controversial penalty given one way, controversial in that it's a tough call, that if there is another one the other way, it's probably going to be given because that's how these things go.
And that was the thing about the Acosta one, where his arm was clearly away from his body. It clearly stops the ball from going on goal.
Yeah.
Whether he meant to do it or not is, you can't really judge that much intent. I do still argue that had I been there, I would have said there's no way he could have known anything about what he was doing when the ball goes straight from, a player's head onto his arm within, a yard at most. But when you're looking at what you use to judge handballs now, his ball is outside of his body. It's making himself bigger. It absolutely stops the ball from going on goal. I think that was probably the correct call once it's all said and done, and you take all those things into account.
Yeah, when you take the situation, you take the previous penalty that was given, you take all of it in. It's not a shock it's given. You can argue if it should be given. I don't think it's a shock that it was given. But then Ethan Horvath has the highlight of his career up to this point, and a moment that will, hopefully put him in a better club position going forward. I mean, I'm really curious to see where he lands.
Yeah, it's a big summer for Horvath. I don't necessarily think it gets him a bigger contract, but it hopefully gets him in a club where he can start and be the number one immediately. Yeah. And that's what we need for the U.S., because I agree with you, Jason, that I don't think that Stefan needs a move from Manchester City. I mean, I know they didn't win Champions League, but it's the best club in the world right now, with still probably the best manager in the world at the club level. Playing a style of play that's very consistent with how Berhalter wants to play. It's not a bad position for him to be in. But when you're only playing Gummy Bear Cup games, when you're only, getting a couple of runouts and preseason friendlies, you do have to have some playing time as a goalkeeper to see live action play, because it's so different than it's just so different than what you're going through on training on a day-to-day basis, where people are actually trying to take the ball from you and hurt you, as opposed to, your teammates just being nice and like, oh yeah, Kiefer got it.
What did you think about all of the other extracurricular stuff that we were exposed to in the craziness with fans throwing things and the homophobic chant where you had the 3-minute stoppage, all of the off-the-field stuff, the pitch invader, the guy that invaded the set for CBS at the end of the match? I mean, this match had pretty much everything that you could have from a bunch of different dimensions.
Oh, boy.
I opened another door for him.
Yeah. So I tweeted this out last night, and I think, Jason, to your point, I very specifically said the Mexican fans and team.
Yeah.
I called them out because they were, how do I put this in a nice way? They were not good sports.
Right.
They did not play. Nothing about what Mexico players or fans did last night had anything to do with the spirit of the game. Nothing. That is anti-soccer. That is anti-football. That is not what we play this game and what we come to this game for and to do. That's embarrassing. And the fact that CONCACAF referees had to stop matches 2 times in a row for Mexico fans saying a homophobic slur, not even during a goal kick, in the run of play.
Yeah.
That Roca Malas mouth. That's the whole thing that we're trying to get, and it's you have Memo Ochoa pleading with his fans to not say it. You have other Mexican fans or players saying, like, this is just stop it. And they continue to do it. As a gay man in soccer, I'm glad CONCACAF is doing something about it. I don't know what more you can do other than say, hey, Mexico, you're not allowed to have fans at your games.
Right.
And honestly, if they had this issue during the Gold Cup, what other action do you have to take if you're CONCACAF? Because you're clearly not acting at this point, it seems like they're doing it because they have been told they can't.
There's an element like who are.
The 5-year-old who takes the cookie out of the cookie jar because mom said no cookies before dinner.
Yep.
And for me personally, again, having grown up, and I'm going to say some words that are going to sound bad, and I'm sorry, but having grown up playing soccer and being told it's a commie faggot sport, to have to deal with that in the sport that I love really hurts. And it has happened. I mean, it's happened throughout my life. But to have a crowd of people saying that is wrong. And as I was talking with another guy at the bar last night, I actually am glad CONCACAF referees stopped the match, and I hope that this happens anytime there was any sort of racist or any other slur.
Yeah.
I think we dealt with it with the PSG match. PSG, right? When they just left the field.
Yep.
I applaud that, but UEFA should have done more in that moment.
Yeah, players decided on their own for that PSG match. It's like, we're out, we're done.
Yeah, and I wish I think UEFA eventually came to a fairly correct decision, which shocked me. But, CONCACAF has to step up here and tell the Mexican Federation what the penalties are if this continues. Because, again, we're 2 for 2 in Mexico matches this summer, having to stop a match for this.
Yeah.
You can't tell me it's not going to happen in a Gold Cup based on that pattern of behavior and based on what they've done in the past. And again, what's the penalty? Because this is a CONCACAF competition, right? So you can't necessarily exclude Mexico fans because, especially in the United States, there's so many Mexico fans living here in the States. They're going to find tickets to these matches. And that's fine. Like, Jason, with you, like, for the most part, it's like this is very specifically targeting these people who are doing the bad thing. Mm-hmm. But it's also really hard to not look at trash being thrown on the field at every opportunity and having this chant come up time and time again and not say, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, there's a couple of different elements to it for me. I'm with you 100% that CONCACAF actually showing some action is absolutely a step in the right direction. I think that's the norm now. I think we've moved from ignoring it, from PSAs, which I'll give the Mexican players and their federation. Yeah, they've really worked at this. This is not like they've ignored it. So that's also one reason why I think the punishment has to be very well thought out, because they're not trying to sweep it under the rug at all.
No, they're not.
But you do have some people, and it's a smaller number in my opinion than what it was, but you do have some people who are, like you said, like enjoying breaking the rules and doing it. There's no ambiguity about what it means now. That was one of the initial things that came out was different cultural systems, different cultural norms, all that. Okay, fine. There's no ambiguity anymore. Like, it is very well established what it is, what this chant is, and it's not acceptable. So what do you do? I don't know. I think, it's very hard. I've seen the thing in the Twitch pitch about, the stadium security. Throwing things is a lot easier to identify than people saying things. That's a little harder to identify those people. So I'm going to separate the two issues. Yeah. The throwing things, I'm 100% identify them, use the cameras, ban them from that venue, period, arrest them, do that side of it.
Yeah, you can ban them from every CONCACAF match.
Yeah, easily.
We have the technology. You can see who bought tickets. I mean, and if they aren't the people who bought the ticket, then ban the person who bought the tickets.
Yeah,
exactly.
If that's what it takes.
Do things.
If that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Mhm.
I think the chant at this point, they're going to have to go, because it's not going to be a points deduction, because I honestly don't think that's fair. Because
It's not for the players.
Exactly. The players have really tried here. The Federation's tried. But I do think, empty venue, home World Cup qualifiers is going to have to be the punishment.
Yeah.
I don't, because, it can't be Gold Cup because you can't separate who's who and who's coming in. It can't be that. It's got to be the World Cup qualifiers played in Mexico that are home matches, or Nations League if you want to keep it competition to competition.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to play behind closed doors because of this. And that's going to hurt people who would go and have a good time and support their team.
Yeah.
But that feels like the only fair thing here, because I know it's easy to zero in on that still happening, but I think the Federation and the players have to be given a ton of credit for trying to eradicate it and making some progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not enough.
It has not been ignored, like you said. I mean, the Mexican Federation has tried to encourage them and literally putting it on the big screens or the video boards around the Azteca and other stadiums like Mexico, say that instead of this other thing. And it's like they have tried. But I'll extrapolate this to racist remarks and behavior from fans all across the world, that if you continue to do this, and there are legitimate reports, which we've seen in England, we've seen in Italy, we've seen in a lot of countries, having fans not in the stands is a punishment that you have to take eventually.
Mm-hmm. And if you can identify who's saying things, absolutely do the same thing
Absolutely.
with banning
Yeah.
and punishing.
If you can, but I'm with you. It's so hard to get on camera and like, oh, did he actually say that word?
Right.
It's a lot easier to say, yes, that bottle was thrown from this hand,
Yes.
as opposed to those words were definitely said by this mouth.
Right.
But you've seen instances, I think, with Raheem Sterling, where it's like you can see guys in the stands doing the thing, and it's like those are instances where they got to go.
Mm-hmm.
They can't be allowed back in.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, the Coco said in the Twitch pitch, having an empty Azteca for a World Cup qualifier, that's a hell of a visual and should send a hell of a message, too.
And I hate that.
Yeah, I do too.
I hate that it would have to come to that, because, selfishly as an American fan, it's so fun to watch, Michael Bradley and Charlie Davies score a goal on Mexico and just stun the Azteca crowd. That is great. But again, when we talk about the spirit of the game, we just went through a pandemic where we went through, we're still seeing it in European leagues where we haven't had fans in stands for more than a year. And it sucks. It is not as fun to watch. It's not soulless. I don't like that word about it, but it is just not fun. And to have to play a World Cup qualifying match, probably the most important thing in our sport, outside of actually playing at the World Cup, not having fans there would be a shame, and especially at a place like Azteca, which is absolutely one of the cathedrals of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, is you have to take away those things if they don't correct the bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's got to be the right kind of punishment, and that really is the only one that feels like it makes sense and is appropriate and can be carried out and actually have an impact. I hate that that's one of the takeaways from last night, because that's the kind of game that I think any of us who love the sport, that's the kind of game you live for, with drama, with chaos.
Oh my gosh, it was a great soccer game.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think, honestly, again, having watched these games, and especially with the U.S. being good, I think it was the best U.S.-Mexico game ever.
Yeah.
Not from not looking at a bias like, don't get me wrong, Dos a Cero is amazing.
Right.
The Dos a Cero and the World Cup was great. But that was a highly entertaining match that I think neutrals...
And 2011 Gold Cup final. Those are the two that are just
too,
wild, drunken madness. Each team got their wild, drunken, mad win.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great game between two teams. I thought one team, at the end of the day, I think one team focused more on playing soccer, and the other team was focused on trying to, I don't know, gain every advantage they possibly could. But
disrupt.
Disrupt. And, the team that was more focused on scoring the goals and winning the game and executing their jobs ended up winning. I don't think that you can tell me that the U.S. played better than Mexico, because the stats certainly don't show that.
No.
But that's how U.S. and Mexico games have gone for forever. And that's something that, when I do my recap on Soccer for Us, I'll be critical of Berhalter, because I wrote, it's on the site, 3 stats to look at of did we grow from that 2019 final. And the stats are better, but they're not great. I mean, possession still heavily favored Mexico, which was a little shocking to me when I looked at it this morning. But
didn't feel that way, yeah.
Long stretches of the match where Mexico was really controlling the tempo. So I'm still critical of Berhalter in the fact that if we're trying to play this proactive passing possession style, the numbers aren't really showing that against teams that are pretty darn good. And that's where I'm going to continue to look at Berhalter and say this style of play is supposedly meant to not only get wins against teams that bunker, which we're going to encounter, but also beat teams that are better than us. And so far, it's been hit or miss. I look back, and I know it's not the same, it's an eon ago, but that 2019 loss up in Canada.
Yeah.
And he's changed a lot since then. He really has.
He's
changed tactics, formations, philosophies. Wasn't successful then. Wasn't successful at the 2019 Gold Cup final. You won this tournament, and that's what matters. But the stats are still showing that we're playing a reactive style of soccer. Now, again, Mexico is the number 11 team in the world. They're a very good team. Congrats to Berhalter for finally getting an actual win over Tata Martino. It's the first in his life. That MLS Cup or that MLS playoff win was still in penalties. He didn't have to need penalties to do that. So that's good for Berhalter. But I'm still looking at him a little like, okay, you are coming around to the fact that maybe you're okay. And I credit him a lot for bringing in players and building a culture in this team that allowed them to overcome the adversity they met last night. And that has to be credited to Berhalter.
It's a step. It doesn't mean that they're 100% going to qualify, no questions asked. It doesn't mean there won't be hiccups, but it does maybe for the first time. God, we're going way back. It feels like a big step forward because it's a trophy and it's a significant trophy. A more significant trophy than it was coming in, and it's definitely one that means a little bit, and there's some progress there. It's going to be interesting what the rest of the year holds, because as fun as last night was, as good as it was to see them lift the trophy, as good as it was to see that Reyna, Pulisic, McKennie, trio really stand up big, that all goes away if there's a home loss in qualifying or a bad result on the road, which is going to start in September. It's coming right around the corner.
Labor Day weekend, Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, that around Labor Day is going to be interesting. We have a friendly against Costa Rica on Wednesday, and that is the last time that this U.S. team will play a non-competitive match until whatever we figure out after March 30th of 2022. And this Costa Rica match, even though it's a friendly, it's a weird, you're using this as a mock for those World Cup qualifiers. So yes, it's a friendly. It doesn't really matter if you win, but I'm sure Berhalter is looking at this as can we get a result with a rotated squad type of, setup. So yeah, this friendly against Costa Rica, it may not be competitive, but it's meaningful. And you have Gold Cup next month, and then September starts qualifying. September, October, November, January, March. It's a lot. It's coming up.
Yeah, we'll be talking to you plenty over the next few months, breaking all this stuff down and digging into it. Thank you, man, for the time. Thanks for carving out a little bit for us and giving the spicy takes. We appreciate it.
Well, Jason, thanks for having me, and very much appreciate being a part of this SDH network.
Yeah, thank you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Bartimus Prime 19 on Twitter. Make sure you're following him. Be on the lookout for Bart's breakdown of everything from last night. It does feel like a step to me, though, and it feels like progress finally. I mean, there had been a lot of steps backwards or steps sideways. This feels like a step forward, and I hope it can continue to go forward. A question from the Twitch pitch. Byrne said, I think a pressing style would have fit the U.S. men's national team better, talking about Jesse Marsh. I hope, because I think it's twofold, I hope that Berhalter continues to develop this hybrid model, because I do think there's similarities to what Berhalter's wanting to do. And it's a national team, so it's a different conversation because you don't have the day-to-day training. But I think he wants to play along the lines of a Guardiola, where there is possession, but there is also pressing. There is counter-pressing. Maybe it could tilt more to the Jurgen Klopp way of more pressing, but you can hold the ball and can do the possession stuff. I think the possession is important rather than just a pressing team, because I do think it pushes the game forward in this country. There is an aesthetic to that is valuable to showing that the U.S. can play and not just run. And there's value in that. That also invites more risk, because it's going to be harder to have possession against teams like Mexico. We see McKenzie making the big mistake early. And it's going to be hard at times to have that dual nature. But I do think there's a lot of value through the youth national teams and through the senior national team trying to play. Everybody has their different opinions on it. I think it's the right way to try to play with the ball and be a team that wants the ball and can do damage with the ball. I do think they have to continue to improve to be able to do that against good teams and top teams. And that's going to be the progress that we have to continue to see. Tommy says the U.S. still has to qualify for the World Cup. They haven't even started yet. That's the craziness with this current cycle. The old hexagonal is now the octagonal, and it'll be a group of 8, and you play everybody twice. So 14 games are coming starting in September. And it will be a sprint, because they're going to be doing 3-match windows, which is bonkers. But the way the timing has worked out, there's no way around it to fix this. And this is just where it is. A lot of regions have had to adapt or do things differently. CONCACAF's maybe one that's had some of the biggest changes to their process because of this. They were already changing their process anyway, then they had to make bigger changes to it. So where things stand in CONCACAF right now, the final games of the first round are tomorrow. We're going to have a watch-along for CONCACAF Thunderdome tomorrow night. Group A, and in this first round, the winners go into a playoff. The 6 teams that win the groups have a playoff. 3 winners end up going into the octagonal. That is who will be grouped in with the U.S. and Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. So, Group A in the first round, El Salvador and Antigua and Barbuda are at the top on 7 points. Of course, they play on Tuesday. Things worked out very well from a scheduling perspective. They are both on 7. El Salvador has a significant goal differential advantage. So, El Salvador can advance with a draw. Antigua and Barbuda needs to win. Group B, Canada and Suriname are level at the top on 9 points. They play Tuesday. Canada has a significant goal differential advantage, so they can get by with a draw. Suriname can get by with a win. Everybody else is out in that group. Group C, Curacao and Guatemala are on 9 points. They play on Tuesday. They are even on goal differential, but it is Curacao who has 1 more goal scored. So they hold the card, the tie-breaking card. They get through with a draw. Guatemala has to win. Group D, Panama and the Dominican Republic The Dominican Republic goes through with a win. Panama goes through with a draw. They play on Tuesday. Group E, Haiti and Nicaragua. They play on Tuesday. They are both on 6 points, but it is Haiti with the goal differential advantage, so they go through. Nicaragua has to win, and it would be a historic win for Nicaragua to get to this stage. Group F, St. Kitts and Nevis, they're already into the second round. So then the second round, St. Kitts and Nevis will play the first round Group A winner. So they will play either El Salvador or Antigua and Barbuda in a playoff, 2 legs, June 12th, June 15th. The other playoff games will see Group E, Haiti or Nicaragua, play Group B, either Canada or Suriname. So it could be, if things play out the way they appear, Canada and Haiti in a 2-leg to go through into the octagonal. It's not a shoe-in for Canada. That is not a shoe-in. Group C and D play, so it could be, as things currently stand, Curacao and Panama playing in a home-and-home to see who goes in. So then you get into the third round, the octagonal, home and aways, 8 teams, 14 games, 3 games in September, 3 games in October in the international windows, 2 in November, 3 in January, and 3 in March. So it's 14 games in a very short period of time. The emotional swings will be dramatic here. And, I mean, it's going to be chaos. It will be absolute chaos. 3 teams go through out of the 8, and then the 4th place team goes into the playoff, the interconfederational playoff. So that's the World Cup qualifying cycle. It's about to start. I was very, very concerned, and I still am, but I'm less concerned after the result from last night. I was very, very concerned about this team going on the road and getting results, because you're going to have 7 home games. Yeah, they should be favored in all 7, maybe with the exception of the Mexico game.
Yep.
There's always a stumble. There's always a trip up. There's always a situation where you're missing a player due to injury or things get weird. It's necessary to go steal some points on the road. I worried about this team winning games on the road. Maybe getting some draws, but winning games on the road. They're going to need to win 1 or 2 on the road to guarantee to not have to have any heartburn as you get into March and 3 more games. I feel better about that now, but it's still not a guarantee.
Yeah.
I mean, we know at this stage they're going to have to go to Honduras, where they have historically struggled. They're going to have to go to Mexico. We know how difficult it is to win a game at the Azteca. They're going to have to go to Costa Rica. We know how difficult that is. They're going to have to go to Jamaica, which is very difficult. Jamaica is a very up and down team in Concacaf. They're in a better run right now, I think. And I think they're recruiting some really good talent. And that's a really tough place to go and get a result. It's one that the U.S. hasn't historically done well in, at the office in Kingston. It's a tough spot. If Canada is in, as they should be on paper, they beat the U.S. in a competitive game last time in Canada. Guatemala is not an easy one to go to Guatemala and get a result. Haiti won't be an easy one if that's the one instead of Canada. Like, there's going to be tricky games on the road. You win your home games, you get points on the road, you're going to go through. And that's what the U.S. has to look at this. But it's going to be maybe the most difficult World Cup qualifying cycle that we've ever seen because of 3 games in those short periods of time and just what it looks like.
All of the schedule compression, all of the travel, all of those intangibles that we talk about that lead into these games that are going to be difficult places to play, traditionally have been difficult places to play. But going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, it's matches like last night in Denver where you've seen something and you're hoping that the United States can take that as an experience, build on it, understand the huevos that was attached, and carry that into these difficult places, because you've mentioned all of the venues that have been traditionally tough places to play won't be any easier per se than it has been in the past, but you're going to these difficult places. Take the lessons from Denver and continue to apply them forward so you can get wins. Take those points to where you're not having that heartburn, considering all of the compression that's involved in a 6-month period, having to play 14 matches to get everything squared away for a World Cup bid.
Okay, the Concacaf Thunderdome watch-along tomorrow night will start at 8 o'clock. We will miss out on the Haiti-Nicaragua match. That's going to be on Paramount Plus. It's on Telemundo Deportes as well. But that's at 5 o'clock. We're not going from 5 till whoever knows. We're going to start at 8. 8 o'clock, the games kicking off at that time will be Curacao and Guatemala. There's also South American World Cup qualifiers as well that we'll be peeking in on and keeping up with. 9 o'clock is Panama, Dominican Republic, Canada, Suriname, El Salvador, Antigua, and Barbuda. So get whatever beverages you want to get. Make sure the snacks are ready, and we'll try to keep up with all of this madness, because as nuts as last night was, get into World Cup qualifying with some teams that maybe haven't been there before, haven't been there in a long time, and things could get very, very weird. So we will embrace the weirdness of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying tomorrow night. Also in South America at 8:30, Paraguay and Brazil. 9:30, Chile and Bolivia. 7 o'clock is Colombia and Argentina. So that'll be going into the second half. We'll be keeping up with those scores as well. So it will be a bonkers evening of CONCACAF and CONMEBOL stuff in the World Cup qualification round tomorrow.
Yep. A couple of other things on Twitter. Tafka says the 3-match window should favor the USMNT. On talent, we're above all other region foes and close to Mexico, maybe higher. But the next 11 players, the USMNT has a clear edge in his opinion with that much talent on the bench. I really think the depth separates us.
It can. Depth is good, and depth is important, and it's going to be important in that World Cup qualifying cycle. But there also has to be the quality up top. That's the concern, is nobody's established themselves up there. And I do worry about that, because it's nice to have 6 starters out wide, but you're only going to play 2. You know, like, it's good to have the other 4 that are good and can be there if needed, but only playing 2 at a time. So it's the starting number 9 is the one that I worry about. That's the position that I worry about the most. So hopefully somebody can get established there. Yes, John is trying. He is trying.
I'm trying.
I'm doing the best I can.
Huevos.
Rich Ransom's in. He says he wants more respect put onto the Gold Cup. It's the North American Championships, the equivalent of the Euros and Copa. At the bare minimum, it should always be won by the U.S.
Mexico would argue that. I think that's a little presumptuous. At a minimum, in my opinion, it should be not twice in a cycle, but once. They're showing the fan who tried to bum rush the Paramount Plus stage last night on Teisei, and where he dropped off to, and I don't think anybody knows how far he dropped.
Right. I haven't seen anything about that.
They are having a very good laugh about that on Sportia right now. No, I think the Gold Cup needs to be once, like the Euros. Copa America's gotten greedy and doing it every 2 years as well. I don't think that suits it. It needs to be once, and it needs to be not like this one where it's pushed back and it's not going to be at 100%. They always had, when they did the 2, it was always like the first one after a World Cup, the year after the World Cup, that was the big Gold Cup. The one a year before a World Cup was the Little Gold Cup, where teams would experiment because they were in the middle of the hex at that point. Do one, and do it in the middle, like the European setup is, and you can have Nations League be the fill-in around it, and hopefully that will be the process going forward. I agree, the Gold Cup should be bigger, but this one can't be bigger, because clubs are going to need their players for preseason, and they're going to put up a stink about it. And yes, they can't decline those call-ups. They can't decline future call-ups for World Cup qualifiers. But what they can do is say, we're not releasing the player until the bare minimum of time. We will not release them a little early for you. Greg Berhalter and other managers would like to have those players a little early sometimes. And teams will play hardball with that if you make them unhappy with pulling players away from preseason. So it stinks.
And apparently, IFAB has come out with law changes for 21-22.
Apparently, we talked about this months ago.
Yeah. The IFAB, as they call themselves on Twitter.
Okay.
They are the IFAB.
Well, yes, they are like the Miami FC.
Yes, it is the IFAB.
Yes.
And their presentation includes individual law changes, offside.
Yeah, MLS is already playing with these laws, by the way. That's what I'm saying. This is all going into effect for the upcoming European season, but MLS went ahead and enacted them because it was voted on, I think, in March. And usually the MLS has already started at that point, so they're not able to do them at the beginning. This year, with it being later, they were able to implement these for the whole season rather than play on an outdated set of rules because they didn't want to change midseason. So,
yeah. And just reminders, offside position for purposes of determining for Law 11, the upper boundary of the arm is in line with the bottom of the armpit. That is the additional text that has been added this year.
Okay, that's about what they've done in the past. It's semantics over where they're going to draw the line, but there's still a line.
Yeah, their explanation is the shoulder is not part of the arm for handball. It is therefore a part of the body with which a goal can be legitimately scored and so must be considered when judging offside.
Yes.
Law 12, fouls and misconduct. Kevin from Charlotte focused on this one. For handball, not every contact of the ball with the hand or arm is an offense. A player's hand or arm position should be judged in relation to their body movement in that particular situation. Removal from the accidental attacking handball offense of the references to a teammate and creating a goal-scoring opportunity.
They cleaned that up, which was good. Because the way it was written previously was any handball in the build-up to a goal off an attacking player, any ball that hit a hand is maybe the better way to say it, the goal could be pulled back. And now they've said not just, any time. So if it happens at midfield and then a play goes through and they score, that was not doing that. It's got to be immediate. And it's got to be right there or it's the player scoring it. That's better. Handball's always going to be a tough one. I don't think they can make it black and white. I think there has to be judgment, and there has to be, I think, an acceptance of that judgment in these situations, like the one last night called on the U.S. I understand why it was called. I don't love it because it's so close and it's hard for the player to react, but his arm's away from his body and the shot's on goal. So I get it. I understand the call. As long as we can understand the calls, I think that's good. I think handball turned into a situation where we couldn't always understand what was being called because it was trying to be black and white, and it didn't feel like it was actually defining what we thought a handball was. It's got to get better. I think that's one that can't be black and white. There's other things like offside is black and white, and it has to be black and white somewhere. Like you have to have some kind of line that is created. You're either on or you're off. But there does have to be a long-term conversation about how do we want that to work in the game, because now that line can literally be drawn, there are people who don't like the offside law. The law didn't change with VAR. The offside law did not change. The implementation did, because then you're actually able to see it and go back and look at it. And people don't like that. And if that's where it is, that's fine. What can it be going forward? And there's not an answer to it. Like, they're going to have to do some trial and error. I do think they need to broaden where that line is to give the attacker a little more room, because that's what people want, because that's how they thought it should have been called before, or it was called before, when you were just using the AR's eyesight. And if that's the case, that's the case. Try it and see what that is. If it's just the feet, if it's just the upper torso, if you're going to do it that way, if any part is on, then you're on, rather than if any part is off, you're off. There's ways to do it. You're going to have to try some things. You're going to have to use some leagues as guinea pigs and see what the effect is. But that's going to have to change at some point here. And IFAB has talked about making that change, but they've got to go through the trial process and all of that. Anything else on Twitter?
I believe we are caught up on the Twitter, sir, other than one final thought from Nathan about L Tree. And he says, L Tree is boogers with an exclamation point for his hashtag perfect reaction Monday.
Kindergarten Monday. I like it. Yeah, going back to something Bart said about, the mentality from them and their players, I think where they've gotten into those situations, and we've seen Mexico have these issues a lot against the U.S., but not solely against the U.S., it is out of a little bit of an insecurity factor. And they act that way when the U.S. is a threat to them.
Mm-hmm.
When Mexico's dominating the United States, you don't see that stuff as much. When it's a threat, they don't handle it well. And some of that is down to the fact that they've dominated CONCACAF for the majority of the time CONCACAF has been a thing. And they don't like to be tested. And they're not comfortable being tested because they don't get tested a ton. That's why it's good for everybody if CONCACAF's better and they get tested more. And then they handle that mentality. That's what's going to help them get past into a fifth game, getting out of the round of 16 in a World Cup. They struggle when the heat gets turned up because we see the mentality at times. They've got to find a way to deal with that. We'll see if they can. But, yeah, I feel like it comes from a fear or almost an inferiority idea of, okay, we're used to being the bully here, and when somebody is toe-to-toe with us, they struggle. And for them to go as far as they want to go, they're going to have to get over that mentality, and that's got to change. And maybe the next generation does it because, Andres Guardado was a clown at the end of the match. He took a swing at Weston McKennie that wasn't punished. It was a full-blown, threw a punch.
Mm-hmm.
Shocking. And, he's one of those guys who has been that bully for a long time in CONCACAF. And they don't handle not even being bullied, but just being stood up to. They don't handle that very well. And that's something that Mexico, to get to Game 5 and beyond in a World Cup, they're going to have to handle that better because that's a huge issue.
Yep.
Some other things to keep an eye on ahead of soccer over there tonight at 7 o'clock. I don't know if you saw this. The French national team was hanging out, and Antoine Griezmann was showing his football manager game. He's playing with Newcastle, and he won with 5 titles in a year. And he was telling Kylian Mbappe that he bought him in the game and took him to Newcastle. And Mbappe said, Newcastle, it's not really warm there. He was not very happy about being shipped to Newcastle in Antoine Griezmann's football manager game.
Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, sorry, Alex. So don't expect on Kylian Mbappe to sign with Newcastle anytime soon. Charlotte FC has a new player. Did you see this, John?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about this player.
Someone who is not shy about following pretty much anybody on social media through his Twitter. Christian Fuchs, part of the massive release of players from Leicester. Fuchs and Wes Morgan were the 2 big names, but Christian Fuchs is one of the first ones that is going to be heading to Charlotte FC. So I thought that was an interesting pickup, a good veteran presence at the back for them. We'll see what he's got when he comes over here for MLS.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why is Christian Fuchs a good veteran pickup and Ryan Shawcross was a horrible, bad, no good signing?
Christian Fuchs has been, I think, healthier than Ryan Shawcross.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just asking because he's 35.
Yeah.
How much did he play this season?
Not a lot. So I'm applying the Marcus Allen Kansas City Chiefs theorem to this for the moment.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Like I said, for the moment, like I said.
But there's really no logic behind it.
Had a whole lot of run at Leicester for the last little while, so I'm thinking there might be some tread left on the tires.
Why, though? Ryan Shawcross didn't have a whole lot of run at Stoke.
No, because I thought he was a little bit more dinged up than Christian Fuchs was for not playing at Leicester as opposed to Shawcross being more injured and not playing for Stoke.
However, if I'm looking at the possibility, and Shawcross hasn't been good for Miami, don't get me wrong, but that was universally panned when he was signed. If he was hurt and not playing and is healthy, I'm going to feel more positive about somebody who's been healthy but has just been passed up.
Yeah.
But you're more positive about Fuchs. That's why I'm asking, because you're not the only one feeling that way. I'm just trying to understand what the difference is because I don't think there is one. I think a 35-year-old defender who hasn't been playing, whether it's injury or form, is not going to come in and thrive. If he's not expected to play every minute and he is that veteran guy and he's going to maybe do some stuff with Charlotte's Academy because he actually does have an academy in the States.
Yeah.
Okay, there can be some things for that, but that's not what you were saying. Like what we were talking about was what he do on the field. I have no indication that he'll come and play and do well in MLS. None.
No, like I said, I don't know how many minutes he's going to play, but I like the idea.
I don't like the idea. I hate the idea. I despise the idea. It's a 35-year-old defender who couldn't get on the field last year.
But like I said, I'm applying the Marcus Allen theorem from his
Marcus
time.
Allen didn't play in this game.
Where Al Davis didn't play Marcus Allen. He sat, didn't do anything, goes to Kansas City because he hadn't been playing, still had something left in the tank, and was successful for Kansas City. Like I said, that's the theorem that I'm applying here to Christian Fuchs until proven otherwise that the tires are coming off and the suspension's bad and that the hood comes up on and the engine drops out. We'll see who else is brought in.
Marcus Allen was trying to prove something to Al Davis. I don't think Christian Fuchs is trying to prove anything to Leicester, and I don't think Leicester's paying attention to Charlotte FC. I'm a wee bit skeptical of all that. Tajon Buchanan, New England Revolution, generating overseas interest. French, Dutch, and German clubs emerging as potential suitors, according to TSN. I like somebody looking at Tajon Buchanan. I think he's a very, very good player. I wonder if he will be looked at as a wing back in Europe as opposed to a winger. But Buchanan's a guy who could potentially he needs to go somewhere where he'll play, even if that's a lesser club, because I think there's still questions about him and his game. But French or Dutch club would be a really good fit. Maybe the right German club could be, but I worry about maybe is he going to get on the field enough. Buchanan's a good signing potentially and a good bargain signing for a European club. Gianluca Busio is drawing interest as well, and this is not new. Taylor Twellman said clubs from Serie A, multiple teams have put in bids. He's got Italian citizenship, so he would qualify as a domestic player. That dramatically increases his value in Serie A, along with how well he is playing. Busio needs to go to the right club as well. And we've seen it both positive and negative with guys going to clubs, bigger clubs, who don't play a ton. He needs to go and play. He can't go and sit somewhere. He's just too far along, in my opinion. So very curious to see what happens with Gianluca Busio, but I think it's going to be a large contract or a large transfer fee that's going to pull him away.
Yep.
We'll talk European. We'll talk the Euros tonight. Ben White has replaced Trent Alexander-Arnold on the squad. That shows a little bit of the uncertainty over Harry Maguire, who might not be available for the first game against Croatia on Sunday, bringing another center back in Ben White, who did play in the warm-up match against Romania. Arsene Wenger said this, "For me, England is the closest to France. They have the highest creative potential in Europe. They have a goal scorer who does not need many chances. I like Foden, Mount, Grealish, and Rice. They can compete with anyone. They just aren't very stable and mature at the back." I totally agree with that assessment. I think England can compete with France. They're going to have to be strong enough defensively, and I don't know if they are.
Yeah.
But they have the potential to do that. I'm really interested to see who else could compete with France in the Euros. Can Italy step up? Can there be a last hurrah for Germany and Jogi Löw? Spain, Portugal, can they emerge? Belgium, this is maybe the last hurrah for their group in the Euros. I think the World Cup will be the last one for this golden generation. But can they do it? I don't know. I think France is the favorite, and England is probably the number 2. But there's questions about them defensively. Spain, there has to be questions right now because Sergio Busquets has tested positive for COVID. They pulled out of a friendly. Spain did. They're going to play the U21s against Lithuania on Tuesday. Everybody else has tested negative. Busquets and his contacts will remain isolated. 8 days before their Euro 2020 opener, Busquets has tested positive. Not good. Copa America, we've mentioned it multiple times. Is it going to happen? What's going on? There's been reporting now at a Globo Esporte in Brazil that the Brazilian players have agreed to play. They had previously not wanted to play. Sounds like they have agreed to play. the Confederation President of Brazil, the Federation President, Rogério Caboclo, has been suspended for 30 days after an accusation of sexual harassment against him emerged. The Federation received an ethics committee decision to temporarily suspend him. Could be extended. It's going to be investigated now. He denies any wrongdoing, formally accused by a former staffer on Friday, according to Globo Esporte. Saturday, his lawyer said that Caboclo would prove his innocence in a case they did not detail. He has been an organizer of this Copa America coming to Brazil and starting on June 13th. That's, very soon.
6 days.
We'll see. On the silly season front, Erling Haaland, according to AS, it will cost €200 million to buy him this summer. That numbers went up. I don't think he's going anywhere. Kylian Mbappe, the president of PSG, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, has discussed his future and said he won't leave this summer. He'll never be sold, and he'll never leave on a free transfer either.
Rah!
I don't know how any of that is a guarantee, but okay. They still got to sign him to a new deal because he's got one more year on his contract. Interesting. We talked about Simeone and Atleti and getting a new deal through 2024. Part of that is El Cholo has requested that Atletico Madrid signs Lautaro Martinez. Atleti's going to try. They're, just like everybody, the pandemic has affected them, and they're not a giant money club, but they're in decent shape. Inter are asking €70 million for Lautaro Martinez. Simeone wants to get him. That would be a pretty big addition, and if that happens, then I think Atleti goes into the next season as a favorite.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny that PSG has doused Barcelona's dreams of getting Jorginho Wijnaldum. Barcelona's not going to make an increased offer. PSG offered more than double the wages that Barcelona did. That's just kind of we are not going to even engage in a back and forth with you. Here's more than double. You're coming to us. It's available on a free from Liverpool. He's going to sign with PSG, according to Fabrizio Romano. We'll get into some stuff out of Italy with Inter, what their plans are to try to get their finances right ahead of next season. Also, concerns about the system collapsing due to all the debt that a lot of clubs have in Italy, and there's no guarantees that there'll be fans in the stands when the new season starts. That's definitely still a question. So stay tuned there. We'll talk about Aston Villa and some of their plans for next season. They are making moves. We might get into, if Jarrett joins us, Celtic and their plans. It looks like they might have a manager, although it's not guaranteed. We'll see if that goes down. We will also talk about Pulga Rodriguez and Colón winning the Copa de la Liga, their first major trophy. And if you haven't seen some of the celebrations on the pitch, in people's homes, it's a 116-year-old club that won their first major trophy, and there were some things that happened in celebrations that were different,
unique,
very, very different. We'll talk about that, but very happy for Pulga, who is out of contract at the end of June, and Atletico Tucumán, where he started his career at a big level, has already put an offer on the table, allegedly. I would assume Colón is going to try to do everything possible to keep him. But there was that talk before about, he's never played for a big club. And, the form he's been in, he was incredible this season. Best player in the competition. There was this idea that maybe he goes to Boca Juniors. Maybe. Well, Carlos Tevez has left Boca Juniors, so it would make even more sense for Pulga to go there, and it would be so weird to see Pulga with, a top team. But, if he wants to come to Atlanta, I'd be great with bringing Pulga Rodriguez here.
He wants to play in the Olympics, too.
Play him in the Olympics. He wants to play in the Olympics. That man should have the opportunity to do what he wants. If he calls up the Argentine Federation and says, I want to play in the Olympics, he should be one of the overage players and plays in the Olympics. But also, if he wants to fulfill a senior roster spot on a supplemental contract and come to Atlanta and, I'll pick him up at the airport. Well, why are you bringing up Chris Penso?
Just that was the first. That was the first ref that popped into my head.
Why are you bringing up refs with Pulga?
Nutmegs.
Yeah,
all those pregame nutmegging.
Yeah. He's got to be the captain and start the games. That's not going to happen here, John. I'll pick him up at the airport if we need to get Pulga here. I'll take him out to dinner. I'll make sure he's got all the mate he needs. I'll do whatever it takes. So let's get Pulga here on that deal. Come on, let's do this. Yeah, the Pinso hate out of nowhere. That was crazy. I am throwing the Hail Mary perfect, Tommy. If I will buy the first Pulga Rodriguez jersey if he comes to Atlanta. It would be amazing. Very happy for him. Very happy for Colon. Great club, great fan base. Go listen to Los Palmeras over and over again, El Sabalero, and you'll see why. It was very, very cool. It's happy for them. They dominated Racing, so I know Gustavo was very happy watching Racing suffer after Colon knocked out Independiente. At least they made Racing suffer, so Gustavo was very, very happy with that. All right, soccer over there tonight, 7 o'clock on the Twitch. Make sure you are following us. If you can subscribe, we greatly appreciate it. If you are a subscriber and not in our Discord, please let us know so we can make sure you have your Discord invite. There will be plenty of things to discuss. The picks of the week went down to the wire this week. We'll talk about who won and how that happened, and I don't know what our picks are going to be this week. This week they could be even weirder than last week, and last week was weird enough.
Thunderdome!
That's one day of it, yes, but we pick a game a day, and there's a bunch of days that there's not going to have a whole lot of options on games, so we'll have to figure this out. That's tonight at 7 o'clock. If you have any soccer over there related questions, I'm sure there'll be more madness with silly season and such. Andrea Pirlo still doesn't have a job. Maurizio Sarri still doesn't have a job yet, although it sounds like Lazio will be the job. Antonio Conte has said no to Tottenham, and he's not taking calls anymore, it sounds like. So does he just sit it out? Does he wait around? Zinedine Zidane, does he just wait around? All this stuff. Actually, Burned, I disagree. I think I don't know if Pulga's really made a whole lot of money in his career, so it could be enough to bring him here because he's never played for a big team. I'm really throwing the Hail Mary here, Burned. Just roll with it, okay? Come on, roll with it. Just roll with it with me. Come on, we want to bring Pulga Rodriguez here. It'd be amazing. But soccer over there tonight, 7 o'clock. Y'all have a good rest of the day. Mucho plot, y'all.
Mucho plot, y'all.